Hello and welcome to Liverpool News Daily. I'm Tom Beattie and I'm joined by Ben Boxack. We're here just to talk about all the big headlines to do with Liverpool Football Club today. Ben has been over to watch the Europa League final in Budapest last night, I believe. What was that like, Ben, as an experience? Obviously, two interesting teams to watch. I don't think many players on both sides to kind of keep an eye on from a Liverpool perspective, but it must have been a really good experience. And obviously, Liverpool will be in that competition next year as well.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable. I enjoyed it, and obviously, not necessarily an eye to. You don't have to. There's not really any player that Liverpool have been linked with, or you can keep an eye on. But there were some few former Liverpool players involved, like Ronaldo and Suso as well. And on top of that, like you mentioned, the fact that Liverpool will be in this competition next year, it was just interesting to see the emotions in the final. And everyone talks about this being a Mickey Mouse Cup, maybe not as much as the Europa Conference League now, but at the end of the day, I think once you get to the final and once you win it, you don't really care about what other people think. I think it's about the emotions and winning a European trophy and just winning a trophy in general. I think it's a very cathartic experience, and I think um, like Klopp said, it doesn't matter as long as you're in Europe. It doesn't matter which competition it's in.
Mm-hmm.
All it matters is that you're in there and you're there to compete.
Yeah, exactly. And, a great city to go to as well, obviously Budapest, and it'll be Dublin next season. So you can see that equally being, a real kind of a party if Liverpool are to get there, obviously. But yeah, back onto the details of today anyway. So it won't be a surprise to hear the name Alexis Mac Allister mentioned. Again, he's obviously the priority, I think, for Liverpool, kind of entering into the summer now. Obviously, I think since I've been on the stream, Jorg Schmadtke has been announced now as the new sporting director at Liverpool, obviously on a temporary deal for this summer. But yeah, there seems to have been a lot of groundwork gone in, I think, behind the scenes and that sort of thing. What's kind of his in trade, you think, at Liverpool? Obviously, Mac Allister remains as the Echo has reported here, the transfer priority, and they're still trying to sound out Mason Mount by the looks of it. So, yeah, he's got a lot of work on his hands, hasn't he? I think, Ben.
Yeah, he does. I mean, it's a big task for like the amount of stuff that needs to change at Liverpool this summer, the amount of players potentially leaving, the amount of players that need to arrive. It's a huge task. I think it's a monumental task, and I think it's probably the biggest task for a sporting director has had to face at Liverpool. I think before, um, it's like when Jurgen Klopp first arrived, the squad was built up gradually. The only time I can really remember under FSG where there was a similarly difficult task is when Luis Suarez left the club and Liverpool were kind of left to replace him, and they decided to do that with a few Southampton players and Mario Balotelli, which didn't quite work out. But I think it's on a similar level this summer in terms of getting the right replacements in, getting the right players in, and you have to get it right because as we saw that season when Suarez left, things can turn downhill very quickly, and we saw that this season as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot for him to get right, obviously, this summer, like you say, and, there's just so many holes in that squad at the moment that clearly need filling. So obviously we've been linked with a couple of midfielders yesterday as well. Obviously Kone at Borussia Mönchengladbach, Thuram as well at Nice. So yeah, there does seem to be so many rumours at the moment, doesn't there? Sort of linked with Liverpool. One name that keeps coming up as well, Youri Tielemans on a free. He's in a bit of a unique situation, isn't he? Obviously, he's still got a bit of pedigree in the game, but he's coming off the back of a relegation. I don't think he really did his sort of, he didn't do his reputation sort of many sort of wonders, if you like, with that relegation, did he? I mean, I don't think he played particularly well that season. So yeah, whether that'd be a deal that Liverpool would look at, I'm not so sure. But he would be kind of a cheap alternative for Liverpool, wouldn't he? And possibly if Liverpool have to go big in other areas of the squad, do you still see him being an option for Liverpool?
I think it's an interesting one. I don't necessarily think his style suits Liverpool. I think he's been sort of bounded about as branded as this sort of midfielder who doesn't put in enough work off the ball, and I do see that sometimes. I don't think his work rate is quite up there, but at the same time, technically, he's a very gifted player who can play the type of football that Liverpool like to do on the ball. He's good at pass. He's got a good passing range, excellent technique, and obviously a very good long range shot as well. I think maybe if we were talking a couple of years ago, I would have taken it. But right now at this stage, I think it's all dependent on how much his wages would be, which you'd imagine would be quite expensive considering he'd be coming on a free transfer, and Liverpool don't tend to give or pay out very high wages, and I think because of that, I don't really see it happening because he probably wants a big pay rise as well.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a strange one in some ways, isn't it? Because, like you say, a couple of years ago, I think his stock was really high, particularly after he scored the goal in the FA Cup final. And he had a really good season that year as well. Yeah, it seems like a career that's kind of fizzled out a little bit. Obviously, he's still young. I think he's about 25, 26. So I still think there'll be suitors for him. But possibly if Liverpool are trying to sort of get up to that next level again, I'm not kind of sure whether he really fits the bill in that respect. So, yeah, I think we agree on that one. The final one, which is a bit of a blow, kind of, contradicts what the Echo said a little bit, is obviously according to the report in the Telegraph, Mason Mount has apparently agreed terms with Manchester United as he edges closer to leaving Chelsea this summer. So yeah, Mason Mount, obviously, we're hoping, I think, as Liverpool fans, possibly that he's still on the radar. Like the Echo have said, I think Liverpool are still trying to do the groundwork on that kind of deal. But yeah, it would be a bit of a blow, wouldn't it? I think to see him go to sort of your arch rivals as well. I think it'd be a double whammy in some respects. Because I do think he would have sort of, filled the void a little bit. He's good for this kind of system, the gegenpressing style that the Klopp tries to play. So yeah, what are kind of your thoughts on that, Ben? Obviously, it would be a bit of a blow, I think, wouldn't it, if he would end up at Manchester United?
I'm not particularly concerned, to be honest. I
No.
think he can go there. I think his form has been pretty poor for Chelsea this season. And obviously, right now, Liverpool needs someone who can lift them and who's in good form, who can just come in and, doesn't really need to work on anything, just maybe adjusting to the system and that's it. I think right now, Mount's probably got a bit of a confidence issue. He's been injured. On top of that, he's only got a year left on his contract, and United are probably going to be paying silly money for him from Chelsea. And I think at that point, the kind of price tag that was bounded around him, it was around, I think, between 60 to 80 million. It's not worth it for a player of his sort of pedigree. I think it's too much, especially on a 1 year contract. And I think there's just better options out there in the market for Liverpool. So I think it's not necessarily a decision that also comes down to the footballing side of things. I think Mount's probably thinking about the financial aspects as well. And I think just purely because Liverpool, based on the kind of fee Chelsea want for him, cannot afford him. So I think he's almost been forced out of necessity to choose Manchester United over Liverpool. And yeah, I mean, if Liverpool could have got him for a decent deal, I'm thinking around 40 to even 50 million, perhaps I would have taken it. But anything above that, I think is it's just not worth it. There are far better options in the market, and yeah, I'm not. I don't see it as a blowout. I don't see him fitting in well at Manchester United as well. I think it's an odd one because they've already got Bruno Fernandes, and
Yeah.
he's kind of their main man. And Mount wants to play in Bruno Fernandes's position. He doesn't want to play out on the wing. That's kind of why he's also leaning towards a move away from Chelsea. So in a lot of sense, it doesn't make sense for either party. And I think, but just purely based on that, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a good transfer.
Yeah, I think a lot of it does come down to money, doesn't it? And obviously, like you say, he's running down his contract at Chelsea, so there would only be a year left on his contract, and this is their last opportunity to get decent money for him. You kind of don't want to be the victims of that a little bit, I'd say, having to pay sort of an extortionate fee, just to kind of, allow them to make some money on him, essentially. So yeah, it might turn out to be, a good thing, a blessing in disguise in some respects. But yeah, obviously Liverpool's attentions will kind of turn, I think, now to other targets, if that is to be believed. But yeah, I think that kind of brings us to the end for today, Ben. If there's anything else you want to add?
That's it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and I think we'll be back either tomorrow or early next week. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.